Okay, so we have just finished entering the hydrology data, the rainfall and infiltration, and we can now set up a downstream boundary. So what we'll need for this is just to set up the map. So let me just simplify a few things here. Let's see, we don't need this, and we do need this. And what we have down here at the end of our project is a single opening through the structure or through the bridge opening where the water surface elevation in the bay can uh, enter, or I guess set the stage for the water surface elevation in the system, like probably up through here. It's about a 2-foot tide condition in here if you take into consideration the tide charts at Cocohatchee and Tamiami. So we'll just use this area to kind of help set that up. Oh, we don't need infiltration data either. Let me turn off the infiltration layer too. Okay, yeah, that's better. All right, so what we'll need to do is to start with the collapse all your widgets and then open the boundary condition editor. And we'll want a polygon in this case. And let's see, I'm gonna set my raster, my elevation raster to hillshade because it makes it a little bit easier to see where to place the boundary. And I don't want to place the boundary up here because my tide does not go, my water surface elevation is not going to exceed this in this area. So I'm going to click this here. Whoops. Sorry, I think I need to hit that again. I'm going to click this here because I clicked off of it and clicked onto another layer. So I'd click it again. And then I'm going to finish it up here. I'm not going to get that because these two right here are, they're too close to the coastline, or I mean the bank line right there. And then once I have it set in there, I'll just right click and it's an outflow condition. So set it to outflow and click OK. And then if I come over here and I hit the save button, that will write that data to the layer and save it. Now, if I click outflow, this is outflow 1. You can name it and you can set the stage time for it. So we have a time series, and I'm just going to name this time series something like simple tide because I'm not going to use anything like, I'm not going to use a storm tide right here because this whole area is fairly well protected. And so a storm tide will not have the same impact in here as it would out on the coastline. So the water surface elevations in here are probably I'm just going to use the regular tide, which I took off of I took the annual tide off of the NOAA. So let's see, where's our project data and boundary conditions? And what I have here is the predicted tide for a whole year. And I didn't really put a whole lot of effort into building this tide table because it's not too sensitive of a parameter. So you can be the data can be pretty rough. But see here, I have the predicted tide in feet. And if you kind of average it out, you can see that, it's kind of between 1 and 2 feet. And so a high tide would be like 2.5 feet, and a low tide would be around 0 feet at this, or negative, yeah, just around 0 feet. It doesn't really go much below half a foot in the low tide. So I kind of tried to use that to just generate a simple tide table. And then I think I tried to match that to my, water surface. Maximum rainfall is happening around 12 hours, and my maximum tide's kind of around there too. So I used about 2-foot tide. I know that is pretty simple way of thinking about this, and that there's probably all kinds of programs out there to help you develop tides, but I'm not really going to go into that because Noemi is going to talk to you about tide data in the class. I'm just going to show you how to enter it. So I'm going to copy it, just copy it, and then I can just close this, and then I'll put it in here, and I'll click paste, and you can see it's very rough. Now, if this was in Excel, it'd be these nice, pretty little round things, just like you see in your tide charts. But because this is in Excel, I just have a 1 hour tide, and it's pretty rough. But that's okay. Like I said, it's not the most sensitive parameter. And then you can come back here and click the schema button to make sure that you schematize the boundary. So let me show you what these do. This is your regular outflow nodes on this side, and the light blue are your tide nodes. So anything that exceeds this water surface elevation because of the water coming down Coxsahachie will leave the area at a normal depth, but the tide will hold the water surface elevation up to this level. Okay, and that's just kind of how this works. And one of the funny things about this project is that when they flew the LiDAR, let me get a, I used the wrong tool. I'm going to use this LiDAR, this tool right here. When they flew the LiDAR, and let me get down here on the elevation raster, the LiDAR, the water surface elevation says it's -4, which I'm kind of thinking is probably not good, not correct. Because if you look at the tide tables in here, like in this area, it's never going below, it's rarely going below -1 feet. Like if you go 5 years worth of tide data in here, it's not hardly ever going below 1 foot negative sea level elevation. So the fact that this LiDAR data, when this LiDAR data was flown, it grabs this surface at -4, kind of makes me a little bit wondering, where did that number come from? So it might be a point for discussion with this data set. Also, there's some other bathymetric data for areas like further on that can also be reviewed. Okay, now let me get back out of here. I didn't mean to go off on that tangent. Let's get back to the Flow 2D toolbar. Let me check over on the boundary condition. So prepare the map, set up the boundary polygon, save and export, and create the backup file. So we can save and export the data. So let's just click, well, we already saved this data. It's perfectly fine, but we can save the project layer because it has our polygon right there. And then I will, let's see, I don't need to turn on any switches because there are no switches for the boundary control. So I can just hit export, and you'll see that the boundary is ready to be exported. Click OK. And what I've done is I've created a project export folder or project run folder. And in here I have some of the projects that I've been testing and exporting for the purpose of the class. So I'm going to select the project boundary control export folder. And you can create those and name those however you want. I'm just exporting one for every lesson, and I'll click OK, and then you can run it. So I'm going to run it right now just because I want to see. I think I'm going to get an error message that I can ignore. So I'm going to click OK. Yeah, and then let it run. Let's just make sure it runs. Okay. And we'll go ahead and just let that get started. We'll come back to it. And then I'm going to click OK. Ignore this. The run obviously didn't fail. And I'm going to, let's see, save, close, go back to the project folder, and set the backup. Let's see, let's go up, and zip, send to zipped folder, and I will call this the backup, I'm sorry, the boundary condition OK, or the tide OK, whatever you want to call it. And then I'm actually starting to put these into a backup files, because now that I'm kind of ahead of the game, I'm on to a little bit further into the class than you are, but I'm just making the videos. And then just open this back up. So as soon as that opens, I'll stop the recording. And then you can just, again, you just grab the first one and be careful where you put your cursor, because if your cursor's on the other window, when this box pops up, it might get lost and you might not find it. And then also notice over here, I have more things going on over here. Whoops, wow, things are, okay, there we go. So I can, so you see that I have my Flow 2D panel. The Slayer styling panel can probably go away. And the processing toolbox, I probably don't need that either. And then I'll collapse all the widgets and be ready for the next lesson. Okay, so I'll stop the recording here, and the next lesson will be the channel video.